Man helps female bear give birth to cub. What happens next will leave you speechless. A forest on the edge of mystery. The dense forests of the Pacific Northwest were alive with the sounds of nature, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, and the distant calls of wildlife. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and earth. For Jake, a seasoned wildlife ranger, this was his sanctuary. He had spent years protecting the forest and its inhabitants, but today, his mission took an unexpected turn. Jake was deep in the woods, tracking a female black bear he had been monitoring for weeks. Her name was Bella, and she was one of the last remaining bears in this part of the forest. Jake knew that Bella was close to giving birth, and he wanted to ensure she had a safe place to deliver her cubs. But as he approached her den, he heard something that made his blood run cold. A low, pained growl, followed by a series of desperate whimpers. Jake quickened his pace, his heart pounding in his chest. When he reached the den, he found Bella lying on her side, her dark fur matted with sweat and dirt. She was in labor, but something was wrong. The cubs weren't coming out. The encounter, a bear in distress. Bella's dark eyes locked onto Jake's, and for a moment he felt a connection. It was as if she was pleading for help. Jake knew that bears were fiercely protective of their young, and approaching a bear in labor was incredibly dangerous, but he also knew that if he didn't act, Bella and her cubs would die. "Easy, Bella," Jake said softly, his voice calm but firm. "I'm here to help." Bella growled weakly, her body trembling with exhaustion. Jake knelt beside her, his hands trembling as he assessed the situation. He could see that one of the cubs was stuck and Bella didn't have the strength to push it out. He knew he had to act fast. The rescue, a dangerous gamble. Jake reached into his backpack and pulled out a pair of gloves and a small bottle of antiseptic. He had assisted in animal births before, but never with a wild bear. This was uncharted territory. He took a deep breath and gently placed his hands on Bella's side, feeling for the cub. Bella growled again, but she didn't lash out. It was as if she understood that Jake was trying to help. With careful precision, Jake guided the cub out, his hands steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The cub emerged, tiny and wet, its eyes still closed. Jake cleared its airways and placed it gently beside Bella. She immediately began licking the cub, her growls turning into soft purrs of relief. But the ordeal wasn't over. There was another cub. Jake repeated the process, his hands moving with practiced ease. The second cub was born moments later, and Bella's purrs grew louder as she tended to her newborns. The aftermath, a bond forms. Jake sat back, his body trembling with exhaustion. He had just helped a wild bear give birth, something no one in his field had ever done. Bella looked up at him, her eyes filled with something that looked like gratitude. It was a moment Jake would never forget. Over the next few days, Jake kept a close eye on Bella and her cubs. He brought her food and water, ensuring she had the strength to care for her newborns. Bella, in turn, seemed to accept his presence. She no longer growled when he approached, and sometimes she would even nudge her cubs toward him, as if to show them off. The crew back at the ranger station was stunned by Jake's story. They had never heard of a wild bear allowing a human to get so close, let alone help with the birth of her cubs. But Jake knew that this was more than just a scientific breakthrough. It was a testament to the bond that could exist between humans and animals. a shocking turn of events. One evening, as Jake was walking back to his camp, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. The unmistakable growl of a male bear. He turned around and saw a massive bear emerging from the shadows, its dark eyes fixed on him. Jake knew that male bears were territorial and would often kill cubs that weren't their own. If this bear found Bella and her cubs, it would be a massacre. Jake's mind raced. He had to protect Bella and her cubs, but he was unarmed and outmatched. Just as the male bear began to advance, a loud roar echoed through the forest. Bella emerged from the bushes, her body tense and her eyes blazing with fury. She positioned herself between Jake and the male bear, her growls sending a clear message. This man is under my protection. The male bear hesitated, its eyes darting between Bella and Jake. For a moment, it seemed like a fight was inevitable. But then, the male bear let out a low growl and retreated into the forest, disappearing into the shadows. Jake stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum. The forest around him seemed to hold its breath. The usual symphony of chirping birds and rustling leaves replaced by an eerie silence. Bella, the massive black bear, stood between him and the retreating male bear, her powerful frame tense and her dark eyes blazing with a protective fury. The male bear, a hulking beast with scars crisscrossing its muzzle, had been moments away from charging Jake when Bella intervened. Now, it slunk away into the shadows, its growls fading into the distance. Bella turned to Jake, her eyes softening as she let out a low, rumbling purr. It was a sound Jake had never heard from a wild bear before, gentle, almost affectionate. It was as if she was saying, "You saved me and my cubs. Now it's my turn to save you." Jake exhaled sharply, his legs trembling beneath him. He knelt down, his hands resting on his knees as he tried to steady his breathing. Bella lumbered closer, her massive head nudging his shoulder gently. Jake reached out, his fingers brushing against her thick fur. For a moment, man and bear stood together in the quiet forest, bound by an unspoken understanding. From that day on, Bella and Jake's bond grew stronger. She allowed him to visit her and her cubs regularly, a privilege no other human had ever been granted. Jake continued to provide food and medical care, ensuring Bella and her cubs had everything they needed to thrive. The cubs, two tiny balls of fur with curious eyes and playful spirits, quickly grew attached to Jake. They would tumble over each other to get closer to him, their tiny paws batting at his boots as he sat by the den. Jake named the cubs Maple and Oak, after the towering trees that surrounded their forest home. Maple, the more adventurous of the two, would often wander a little too far from the den, only to be scooped up by Bella and brought back to safety. Oak, on the other hand, was more cautious, sticking close to his mother and watching Jake with wide, curious eyes. The legacy, a friendship for the ages. As the weeks turned into months, the story of Jake and Bella began to spread. At first, it was just whispers among the rangers and locals, a tale of a man who had helped a wild bear give birth and had earned her trust in return. But soon, the story reached the ears of journalists and wildlife enthusiasts. Cameras and microphones descended on the forest, eager to capture the incredible bond between man and bear. Jake was hesitant at first. He didn't want Bella or her cubs to become a spectacle, but he also knew that their story had the power to inspire others. He agreed to a few interviews, always careful to keep his distance from Bella and the cubs during filming. The footage of Bella nuzzling Jake's hand and the cubs playfully chasing each other around the den touched the hearts of millions. People were amazed at how a man had formed such an unlikely bond with a wild bear. Bella's bravery, her willingness to protect Jake from the male bear, became the stuff of legend. She was no longer just a bear. She was a symbol of trust, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond that could exist between humans and animals. Jake and Bella's partnership became a testament to the power of compassion and courage. They inspired others to stand up against cruelty and protect the innocent. Wildlife conservation organizations saw a surge in donations, and Jake's ranger station received countless letters from people who had been moved by the story. A new chapter, facing the future together. As the seasons changed, so did the forest. The vibrant greens of summer gave way to the fiery reds and golds of autumn. Maple and oak grew stronger and more independent, their playful antics bringing a smile to Jake's face every time he visited. Bella, too, seemed to thrive under Jake's care. Her once matted fur was now glossy and healthy, and her eyes sparkled with a new-found vitality. But Jake knew that their time together was limited. Maple and Oak would soon be old enough to venture out on their own, and Bella would return to her solitary life in the forest. It was the natural order of things, but that didn't make it any easier to accept. One crisp morning, as the first light of dawn filtered through the trees, Jake made his way to the den. Bella was waiting for him, as she always was. Maple and Oak tumbled out of the den, their playful growls filling the air. Jake sat down on a fallen log, watching as the cubs wrestled in the leaves. Bella lumbered over to him, her massive frame casting a shadow over the forest floor. She nuzzled his hand, her warm breath tickling his skin. Jake reached out, scratching her behind the ears. "You've done well, Bella," he said softly.